Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
Special welcome to our learning partners who have joined from the marketing management batch. And we've also got some former PIM learning partners, PIM alumni, some visitors from outside. So very warm welcome to everybody. It's not the best of weather in terms of having a Zoom discussion with lightning and thunder outside. While we try and manage, I think there are some power cuts also happening. This discussion, I think, will be very rich today. Let me quickly introduce the panel. Ravi Jayawardena, the Group CEO of Maliban, is no stranger to most of you. He's my fellow lecturer in marketing management at PIM. In fact, Ravi is the one who introduced me to PIM. Sriyan Wijeyeratne is the former country manager of Microsoft, and then he did a stint at Hemas as the managing director. Sriyan is also a well-known personality in the industry, very learned, a very close friend of mine also. And we're going to benefit by listening to Sriyan, who always brings a different perspective to any type of thinking or any discussion. Niroshan and I have worked together at LAUGFS for a long time, been very close friends. Niroshan finished his PhD recently, and actually his DBA recently, and he's very fresh with his marketing acumen and knowledge. He currently serves as the director, CEO of LAUGFS, Lubricants, Petroleum, and Car Care. Niroshan is also a lecturer in some of the MBAs that are running in Sri Lanka. So I can't think of a better panel to have for this kind of a discussion today. So how we will plan this out is, or we plan for you, is that we'll get some opening remarks from Ravi, who will introduce the concept of marketing myopia. And then Ravi will then lead a discussion as to how applicable this new concept, or this concept is to the new world, an old concept, how applicable that is to the new world. And then we'll have a discussion. Ravi will lead that discussion with Dr. Niroshan, Pieries, and Sriyan Wijeyeratne. I will come at the end and see if you have any questions or clarifications to ask the panel, and then take those questions. So over to you, Ravi.
Thanks, Asanga. Thank you very much. And in fact, Asanga and I think has worked at Unilever together for a long time. He was my boss actually at that time, and it's just I've come a long way. So thank you very much for this thing. I just want to, before I start this particular program, I can remember when we was like students, the late Dr. Wijeyeratne always said that this concept now almost like 50 plus years, Theodore Levitt's concept, and it will go for another 100 years for sure. It will be very applicable. So what late professor said, Wijeyeratne was absolutely right. As a student, when we were learning, we also thought whether this is really applicable, this particular stuff. But if you really see in today's context, technically what Theodore Levitt said, I think there were two good articles, Harvard one, and then Asanga also has written a beautiful article. I hope all of you all have read those both articles, especially the Asanga's one. So we'll try to build up today the discussion upon that, right? Now, first and foremost, it's a very simple concept. What Theodore was saying is that don't be, most of the companies, what we are seeing is very internal focus. We have products, we have services, and really we want to sell that. So it's a more kind of a internal sort of focus, inside out. But Theodore Levitt said, no, that's not right. So it should be outside in, and outside meaning it should be more consumer focused. And imagine during that time in 1960s is that it's after the World War II, it's more kind of a production, whatever you produce, you can sell kind of a era. When he came out with that particular theory, it's a genius in that sense, because imagine, you would have never thought this is applicable even after 60 plus years. So it's a very fundamental concept. But if you take in today's concept also, if you take today, it's a very applicable concept. Now, I will take, then there were a couple of myths. So before we go into the myths, I will see how it has been during our discussion, we'll try to take Sri Lankan concepts, Sri Lankan, some of the things. I'll share the 3 companies that I've worked and with some other examples, which is very applicable day to day. Some have worked and some have not worked, and how you can really apply to this concept. Now, the 5 myths, I will start it. Okay, the first one is definitely what Theodore Levitt was saying: be very consumer focused, right? Don't do anything if you really are very focused on your products. If you're very focused on your services, you cannot go a long journey. Then he said there are 5 myths. I'll start with the 5 myths. Said that the market expansion, you can grow by expanding the market. Now, to be very frank, now I'll tell you, in Sri Lankan context, we are in FMCG. We actually, in about 5 years back, we were selling to about 50,000 outlets. We now sell it to about 100,000 outlets. We have got some sales now. Last 2 years, we have been selling to 100,000 outlets. So we are in best in class with our competitor, with Unilever, etc. But we have seen the products, whatever we launch, if it's not really, because consumers have a huge choices in the biscuit category, which we are in. We have about 110 SKUs, 40 products. The competitor has almost the same, and there are so many other companies. What we see is that, okay, market expansion is good. Now we have come to a saturation point. We cannot grow beyond that, just a numeric distribution. It is, again, going back to the Theodore Levitt, okay, you cannot grow beyond that, or you go into new segments, for example, unless otherwise you do a very very insightful consumer research. And one of the things now we are trying to understand is that we do a lot of focus groups, a lot of things, but again, going beyond that, shopper understanding and things like that. And it has been helpful very well. I'll tell you a simple example. In 2009-10, when I joined Maliban. Maliban is famous for product quality. And Theodore Levitt said, if you are focused on product, you cannot grow. Exactly in 2009-10, that was the game. And we came out with a product, which is R&D genius, first time in Sri Lanka. We use a natural banana, and we came out with a banana biscuit. We did testing. Beautiful. It's really, consumers said, oh, it's a beautiful biscuit. First time in Sri Lanka, natural bananas. But actually the R&D developed that without doing in-depth consumer research. And I asked, because we didn't have a budget, to be very frank, at that time for research. So we just asked few people, very ad hoc one. They say, okay, banana, this is a good taste. And there's a very shallow type of research. And the product started selling first 5-6 months. After that, I got a guy who was a very research savvy chap. I said, do a comprehensive consumer understanding when the product was growing. And he said, Ravi, it's alarming. Though the product is right now is growing, consumers are saying they will not buy this on a continuous basis. I asked, what's the reason consumers are saying? They say, banana biscuit, we just tried the first time in Sri Lanka, but bananas are freely available in the market. Every corner shop has bananas. So why should we buy a biscuit for banana? We can buy bananas. Why should we get that taste through a biscuit? It's not really. So it will, he said, this will have a natural death. So I said, he asked me whether, is it okay if I tell this at the board? I said, please tell this. So everybody was surprised, to be very frank, because the sales was going up. He said, based on this research, first time after a long time, we have done a bit of in-depth research on consumer understanding. And he said that. And he became like he got a little humiliated. And after 2 months started declining. And we did a lot of advertising, a lot of things, promotions, but it had a natural death. So this marketing guy, actually from zero, he became a hero. Simple logic. The R&D can be absolutely genius, but if you are not really plugged in to, and then after that, this happened in 2009-10, chairman and the board said, every product before you launch, do a comprehensive consumer understanding. And it has worked. Now our success rate is almost like 70%. So that's just a simple sort of a thing, how it is applicable in the real world. No competition in the high-end market, another METI challenge in 1960, definitely take Louis Vuitton or Rolex or whatever the products that, whatever you are in Ferraris, definitely these categories have probably during that time, people would have thought if I come out with a top end brand and you have a niche products, you call it, there's no competition. But Theodore Levitt really challenged that concept. The mass production, he said. Now see, post-COVID, what we have seen, the concept of front end, most of the categories. I don't want to mention the supermarket. I was having a chat with one of the supermarket CEO, a big supermarket chain in Sri Lanka. He said all 125 categories in this supermarket, after first time in Sri Lankan history, volume is down, ranging from 25 to 50% volume, not the values. Values have gone up because of the price increases. So in that context, see, people, I have seen my company, we see the front end growth because of the recession, Forex problem. We had COVID and then Forex problem. Front end growth is very, very minimal. Consumer spend is very minimal. So we have to back end, we have to really have a lean and mean, and more we produce the mass production on a single line, the cost comes down. But now we told the production, you can do production, but you have to be linked with the offtake. So sometimes our production cost goes up, but still, so it's again going back to Theodore's, you sometimes the production people can go on mass production, but he said mass production, though the cost is down, if it's consumer, if there's the broken link, you will not be able to grow. Absolutely. Then there is creative destruction and lifestyle. So if you really see what he was challenged in the 5 myths in 1960, still it's very much applicable. And more, the center of the whole concept is that to be consumer focused. Imagine the world has evolved from production orientation to marketing orientation. Now it's more kind of has gone into more social marketing, all that. But still, this fundamental issue, I think 2 of my colleagues with their background definitely will be able to share more and more experience. It's applicable. So it's very much applicable. So I just shared only the few examples from my own sort of experience. So without further ado, we will try to develop so from that. I first would like to ask from Sriyan, with your FMCG background, how you see the Theodore Levitt concept with your sort of experience has really applied in today's context, in the FMCG category, what you feel, and how the company should look at it. Sriyan? Yeah.
Thank you, Ravi. Firstly, I hope I'm audible because there's a lot of...
Yes, very much. Yes, yeah.
So, Ravi, when preparing for this, I was just asking Asanga whether he'd prefer a more Sri Lankan flavor or global, and he said, try to keep a little bit of a global view. So I'm going to kind of zoom out a little bit and take that stance. I think that the concept we all know, no question, it's simplicity is what brings it the power. But at the same time, we all know over the 60 years, it's been an interesting change that the world has seen, especially 2 elements. One is lots of services businesses have come in. And this was kind of conceptualized a lot more during a lot more of a production manufacturing era. And there's some interesting shifts which have happened in the world linked with that. And secondly is what I want to really talk about a little bit around the whole flat world and the software and technology innovation, digital, that whole piece which has come about. So one of the kind of things which seem to be coming out is like, although Levitt certainly he wasn't very prescriptive. He wasn't saying, here's how to do this. He was saying, this is what you should think about and keep thinking about it. And, I think that is absolutely valid and will stay valid forever and ever. but I'm just wondering at the pace of innovation that we see in the world, with the software industry or making business after business redundant, very, very fast. So there are so many industries which are getting taken out by technology industries. So then my question, or something I would like everyone to be thinking about, is this concept seems to be more like taking a snapshot of asking yourself, what business are you in? But maybe you need to be taking a sequence of snapshots, because you take a snapshot today with this powerful question, and maybe the board and everyone says, oh, we want to be in this business. 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line, somebody's redefining the entire business. If businesses started on TV or print, they're going, all the way up to e-commerce today. So the notions of industry and business are constantly evolving. And it might mean that you should not only be asking yourself the question of what business you're in, but we should be also revalidating that every now and then to see whether that notion of what business we are in or what is the consumer insight we are chasing is still today. Because Levitt is essentially talking about a longer term view. It's not this 2-3 year profit maximization view. It's the insightful trends which are maybe 5, 10, 15 years down the line. So I would say people need to be thinking a little bit of a cyclical approach also on this, because when you look at the top, the Fortune 500 and all these places, today you find that over the last, say, 2-3 decades, the tech and software companies have ended up kind of dominating that landscape. So how did that much of myopia exist all over the world in so many industries to let the tech and software companies come in, start in one very different place, whether it was Apple, whether it was a Microsoft, whether it was Amazon? They all started in one industry, but they just kept jumping into industry after industry after industry. And so I think it's, I would say, become that much more challenging for business owners and leaders today to truly live this concept. And so it's a tough one. So that's really some piece that I would kind of want to leave as a starter. And I have 1 or 2 more points that I want to kind of bring up. Maybe just chip in on that one, if you don't mind also. One of the other, kind of deafening myopic silencers that I have kind of seen over the last few decades is the whole thing around sustainability and environment. It's there, it's been around, but if you look at the pace in which companies have embraced this thing that we all know is coming, it's been pretty slow. So even in Sri Lanka, you'll see that where people would want to embrace it more for the tick box and the annual reports. And there is, almost everyone is living in denial for quite a long time. So this is one of the biggest business myopias that I see, which is marketing and beyond. So let me just stop with those 2 perspectives on this topic.
Okay, thanks, Sriyan. Thanks you for very valuable insights with a different perspective. Now I would like to go to Dr. Niroshan, really to get your point of view. You come from a different background altogether, right? And as Asanga said, very fresh from completing the DBA. And so what is your sort of views on how, when you apply this particular concept, which is almost 60 years plus in this local and overseas context, what is your view? Yes, doctor.
Yeah. Thank you, Ravi. Thank you for the opportunity. Let me give a little bit of a different context to it, whilst agreeing of what you as well as Sriyan was talking, as well as what Levitt has written. Absolutely correct. There is no 2 words about it. It is relevant regardless whether it is 2022 or 2050, whatever it may be. It is definitely relevant. I have 2 sides to it. One that I would want to leave on the table open is to be keep consistently living, regardless whether it is Sri Lanka or whether it is global, we consistently live in a very changing environment. It continuously changes, especially if you look at the Asian culture, Asian context. It's actually it's like a diabolic environment, and things keep changing. And for most of the time, what we do is we take things for granted. We believe that we know the way how it works, and then automatically we fall or we take ourselves into a cove. And because we are in a cove, we detach from the outside environment, which is the outside in approach, and then we take things for granted, and then we keep producing or delivering products that we feel that is going to fit in, or ones which were successful and now not successful. So one of my points in brief is to understand and to keep always on tab of what the market is. And especially 60 years ago to now, I feel, and I'm sure all of you will agree, that the market keeps changing so rapidly. It changes in a speed or a pace that we can't keep track of. So this importance of always having the pulse of the market in relating to these myths that Levitt talks about is absolutely key. That's one thing, whilst agreeing on everything what you all kept on the table. The second aspect could be challengeable. You probably would say it will take some time to probably digest. We all talk about organizations, we talk about corporate, we talk about how improving businesses, marketing, all that. But what's the purpose of it is, of course, success. Right? Success to an organization. Also, at the same time, success to an individual. And most of the time, we leave out this individual part, which is something that I would like to bring onto the table probably for a discussion. And I see there are many young people in this chat, in this group, where how do we use marketing myopia for ourselves alone in terms of how to pitch ourselves, how to look at the outside in rather than saying inside out. Again, to you as an individual or to me as an individual, how do we bring that out of ourselves so that it fits in better into an environment that entrepreneurs, leaders, management is asking so much from you? And how do you deliver it? How do you bring the best in class out there so that you stand apart? So those are two things, Ravi, that I would like to leave on the table. Second one, it will probably take some time to digest, agree probably, but I feel that's something that we always leave out. We are very focused on an organization or a business, but what about the people who are driving it? And how does marketing myopia apply to them as well? So those are the two things that I wanted to leave on the table.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Niroshan. Thank you very much. So I just will have another set of questions, just one question each from both of you all, and then we'll probably go to the audience, and definitely they must be having a lot of questions. Now, especially Sriyan, this next one is to you. You come from a technological background. Is that you see today's, if you take the latest numbers in terms of research and development, the budget spend, and the first 3 to first 5 is all technological companies, right? For example, Apple is spending about 26 billion, almost like 1/4 of Sri Lankan budget for the R&D. So because these are big companies. In a context, if you take the highest advertising, where the consumer benefits, the advertising spenders are very FMCG companies, right? Like Procter & Gamble is there, Coca-Cola, Unilever. These are very much. Of course, there are some tech companies like Apple, but of course, there you see a big difference. The R&D spend on technological companies, and what Theodore Levitt was saying is that okay, research and development is good. It should be very much consumer centric. And if you really recall, Steve Jobs in 1996, Newsweek interview, he said, I don't believe in research, right? Or the panel discussion, he was saying. Right, the panel discussions is consumer understanding, because consumers really don't know what they are missing. So right, so when you do panel discussion, so he was making that statement. So analyzing those things, what is your view on the whole thing? Because you know, technology side is one, and in this FMCG, how we bridge this, and what is your view on applying to this Theodore Levitt's sort of concept? Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Ravi. So firstly, if I start, Levitt's whole conversation deals with the customer.
Yeah.
But I would think today we have to broaden our thinking to talk stakeholder. I don't think the concept can be driven the way he envisioned at that time if today people are thinking only of customer. So I think today you have to broaden your conversation, because you have governments, employees, like was mentioned earlier, shareholders, influencers, etc., all impacting consumer trends. I mean, you know, there are, you know, governments will go to war, and that will influence trend. You have medical scenarios influencing trends. So there are, you know, anything from policy, taxation, government philosophy. So when we talk trends, it's no longer, it's like you don't have that perfect economic theory of, you know, price. That's too simplified. So today, I think the multi-stakeholder approach is needed, and that is possibly where even the R&D also slightly takes a different form. If you look at the tech companies, they are structured, and that's an important part. Firstly, I would ask many, you know, younger and leaders on the call to kind of take a reflection of your structure in the organization and ask who is spending money on the timeline which is outside your accountability. If the maximum lead time that we are doing, you know, business plans for, say, 5 years, I'm not sure there are too many people who are tasked with spending a ton of money in the 10 and 15-year horizon. Whereas all these tech companies have structured themselves and segregated that to say they deliberately want to understand trends, and not just in software, not just in technology, in consumers, in people, in periods beyond what the traditional companies or the, you know, typical companies would look for. So I think that has been probably their unlock. It has worked to their advantage, because the software and these tech industries have high GPs once you innovate, and therefore you plug in a lot of that back. So the cost structures vary, Ravi, in our consumer business. You know, it's a high proportion of the cost goes into a GP.
Yeah.
Whereas there, you know, you're talking 90% plus GPs, because it's software and incremental costs are less. But you have to go all the way down to understand that what we put into COGS, they put into R&D. So it's a slightly, you know, you have to take a wider perspective. But what is clear is that the result is that those companies have been able to invade the traditional companies and, you know, in many cases decimate them, because they've gone into industries that nobody gave them the right to go into, and become dominant. So I think that if I would close, keys, are you able to own your customers? Are you able to build that affinity with your customers? And if somebody else is taking that place, they can be an aggregator, it can be a portal, it can be some other company. Suddenly you're losing your relevance in the customer's mind.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks. A very good explanation, Sriyan. And we'll go to Dr. Niroshan. I'd like to elaborate your perspective on this in today's context about this, what you said about the people factor. Now, see, the marketing and sales people, especially these, you know, in Sri Lankan context, the consumers are technically the marketing people are responsible. So if you want to apply this theory and if you to build your own personality, especially with this Forex crisis, you see the budgets are very much controlled, and then you see if something fails, the first focus goes to the sales, the sales and marketing people. So when the product is not performing, the blame goes to them. So overall, they're under tremendous pressure. So especially in today's context, so understanding consumer is and bringing that inside outside in is for the marketing people, whether the big or small organizations. Still the issue with this current forex crisis is definitely a big thing. In that context, as an individual, especially I'm saying the sales and marketing people, even it can be across the organization, the key management, because if the organization, if the sales are not coming, the entire organization, the senior team, get affected. So how you see, okay, you have to use in this concept, there are few things fine tuning where it will help the organization performance and it will help the people's overall position or the credentials or the image in the organization. Yeah.
Beautiful question. Thank you, Ravi, for asking that question. I think let me put it in this sense. First thing to go out of the window as soon as there is a crisis, as soon as there is a challenge, is I'm sure you will agree, is a marketing budget and is a P&D budget. And then we are trying to get maximum efficiency, maximum productivity, and maximum performance. And we talk about being resourceful out of the resources that we have. Unfortunately, and plus on top of that, adding shareholder value. Unfortunately, it's like a sport. The sport where you have your players, and if you don't nurture your players, you will have nothing to cheer about. And in this scenario, your players are your employees. And if you don't nurture, even in these trying times, if you don't nurture and if you don't keep the foot on the gas for this element, end of the day, the players will not perform, and then the audience or the people will not have anything to cheer about. So that is absolutely important in organizations. Of course, it's easy to say, tough to do. It's always a challenge because we would always look at trying to maximize what we give back to the shareholder. We look at all forms of things like ROI. How soon do I come back with my return? So many aspects to it. But end of the day, it's absolutely important to understand that people are the ones who actually generate it, and even to understand what the market is feeling like. Again, we require people to service these gaps. The second part of it is what we should do in trying times, in times like this, in challenging, turbulent moments or environments. For me, for far as I believe, there is the number one aspect is the level of stamina that you build, and the weak-hearted will always fail. So, in every, there's nothing new in this. Strategy is something that you will always. These types of things have happened before. People have come out of it somehow, some way. And what we have to do is just try to understand and better it and apply it to the current context, of course, doing certain few changes. But if we try to reinvent the wheel, then we lose our stamina. And so stamina for me is an absolute importance, to be in that level of stamina to withhold or withstand any of these challenges. And also drilling down, it helps. We also have to understand there is always a way if we look at the bigger picture. If I throw out a question, but of course we have the inflation running at about 80–90%. As you very correctly said, Forex is a challenge. But what have we done is the question. Instead of limiting, I was just having a chat with one of my friends 2 hours ago. I mean, what have we done? We've adapted ourselves. I mean, some people are having 2 meals versus 3, and then accepting it. Organizations are also doing it, saying, salary cut or various things, or research and development, no budget for it. Marketing, let's cut down the budget. I mean, first and foremost, we have to understand what brings us that revenue. And if we plant a seed today, we will reap the benefits in the future. But if we uproot it and if we take it out, of course, we can't expect anything coming in the future. And then we look at growth. I mean, you would see most of these organizations, both local and global, they keep investing, especially during these times. And of course, they will not see the return today, but coming in another 6 months, 12, 18, 24, you will start to, and then the bus or the train has already gone, and then it's too late to catch up. So it's absolutely important, both for organizations as individuals, as people as well, to have that level and form of stamina, as well as to understand there's nothing new. There's always something that there's something to do to come out of any of these aspects that is out there in the environment, and what is your part in it. It's very important to understand what's your part in it and what do you have to do on time. Or if not, you will be like another Nokia, being too late to adapt. So that's my thought, Ravi.
Thanks, thanks, Dr. Niroshan, and thank you very much, both Sriyan and Dr. Niroshan, for very valuable insights. So Asanga, I think now we will go to the audience. I think there are a lot of students waiting, and definitely they may be having a lot of questions to ask. So I would like to now.
Shall we open the floor to the audience now?
That's right. That's right, Asanga. Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
So they can.
This is your chance. Can you please introduce yourself and then ask a question or a clarification from the panel? Who would like to start first?
So good evening.
Good evening. Wait.
Yeah.
First introduce yourself. So we'll try and spotlight you.
Yes, sir. So I am Riaz.
Riaz, hold on. Riaz, hold on. Camera on, Riaz. Right, Riaz. Thank you. Good.
Yeah.
So I am working in textile and apparel industry. So I would like to ask the question that how the marketing myopia, this concept impact on our textile industry, because we have been there for last 4-5 decades. Still the area of our customers are still very limited. We are working for only 7 or 8 major customers. So how we can improve or expand our customer base in Sri Lanka for export market?
Okay. I'll give just 1 or 2 comments, and of course, definitely the 2 panelists also can come. So technically, you are in B2B business.
Yes.
Okay. Right. Good. So especially in B2B, one of the key things is that I think this myopic thinking is very much applicable, because you will be your customer end of the day is your end user, and he's also a big company. So it's very important that understanding his overall, it's a more complex. It's not like only sales, marketing, and the entire organization will get involved, finance, supply chain, and understanding that particular. You'd have seen with the Forex scenario. Globally, whatever you manufacture, the cost is going up. So these global brands, if you're doing it, they don't care whether it's coming from Sri Lanka or Bangladesh or even from Vietnam. So understanding that concept. So the more you apply the consumer understanding and then coming out with your sort of solution to fit in, it's like a more collaborative scenario than a conflict, because B2B is always much more challenging at times than B2C in a recession time, because these guys will really push you to the wall in terms of price, and then they still need the quality. So understanding, sometimes you can add value in different ways Say, for example, if you're doing a particular thing for the youth and sharing some of the insights on the end user, because they will be selling to someone who is probably their B2C. So you have to think rather than getting out of the normal business model and go beyond and primarily, like Theodore Levitt says, understanding, in-depth understanding, and how to add value. I think the more you do that, the survival and the growth will be much better. That's my point of view. Sriyan and Dr. Niroshan, you like to, or even Asanga, do you like to?
I think Ravi Sriyan worked in the apparel industry at Texas Jersey.
So Sriyan, definitely you will have a lot of do you like to handle that one? Yes.
Yeah, very quickly. So yes, I think, one of the challenges is back to the earlier comment, what do we invest in R&D? Because when we are in apparel and we are supporting the brands come to the centers who can add value to them to give you more business. So I'd probably draw a parallel with Israel, right? If you look at the amount of fabric and textile and fashion innovation which happens in Israel, is unbelievable. That is because all the R&D hubs, the textile manufacturing, design, all of that has been set up there. So the multiple brands keep coming there for that. And since we don't indulge in that kind of value-added investment and R&D and state-sponsored facilities, we kind of play at the periphery. And therefore, we can take some business from some brands, but if we want to expand, we will have to go back to that same question of we discussed earlier around thinking of the consumer needs on a longer period through better investment in R&D and understanding what the future consumer would want and how can you turn around the designs much faster. Because today, unlike those days, the lead time for innovation in the apparel industry has come down quite a lot. So looking for very fast read and react kind of notions. And so the dynamics in the entire industry have changed. And this is not something that the industry can do alone. It needs state support. So that's why the stakeholder part also comes in to make the best out of being less myopic.
Okay, thanks, Sriyan. Thank you very much for your insight. Yeah, shall we go to the next question?
Anyone else who wants to ask a question, please introduce yourself.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes,
Yeah.
please. Let introduce and open your camera.
Sir, I'm Samita. I just now when it comes to marketing myopia, the main focus is on what the customer needs and requires. But when you running a business that has multiple stakeholders, how do you create a business strategy that that balances all the stakeholders, including the customer? This is my question.
Yeah. Anybody wants to take it? And Sriyan or Dr. Niroshan?
I'll take it.
Yes, please. Yeah.
So Samita, how it works is, of course, we have many stakeholders. As bigger the business, bigger the number of stakeholders. But there is a formality of how you prioritize your stakeholders, which is a simple tool called stakeholder mapping. And to understand, you see, you can't make every stakeholder happy. That's the simple form, because jokingly we say we don't sell ice cream. Only an ice cream seller will make everyone happy. So the importance is because of any organization or any format will have always limited resources. And how you maneuver these limited resources will make you either a success or an unsuccessful business. So how you maneuver these resources will predominantly help you identify through the key stakeholders, and prioritizing these stakeholders will help you understand, even through this model of what Levi talks about, to identify and understand who are my key stakeholders and how do I target them, how do I address their requirements, rather than having a blanket cover, having a carpet bombing, to rather focus. And it's a very important thing for businesses to understand the importance of focus, which most of the time we lose out. So I hope I answered that question.
Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Niroshan. And in fact, just to, Samita, there are so many stakeholders, as Dr. Niroshan said that, and if you primarily satisfy the customer, your consumer, and then technically everybody will be happy, your suppliers, your bank, because the sustainability of the organization will be there. So as said Dr. Niroshan, the priority is the customer. And if he's unhappy, if she's unhappy, and then there won't be any business, then all the other stakeholders will be unhappy. That's the very fundamental. So it's going back to the Theodore Levitt's sort of the concept. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Asanga.
Anyone else who wants to ask a question? Anyone else?
Asanga, if I may chip into something while people are getting
Please.
to the question.
Yes, sure.
There's a interesting timing challenge here, which is that, we are producing and selling for the consumer demand of today.
Guys, please mute your mics, please. It's disturbing. Everybody mute your mics.
So we are producing and, measuring and looking at the consumer demands of today, whereas the real insightful part is to try to understand the consumer needs of a couple of maybe years down the line, for which we have not yet started a manufacturing process. So there is a very tough balance here, because we are all talking about better satisfying the consumer with the kind of products we have and need and in the shorter term. Whereas the bigger part Levitt was talking about in some of the examples, he talks of the cars and the electric cars coming in and the changes in the railroad industry and all, for stuff which is not yet real, not yet happened. So it will take you a decade maybe before you even know whether you have satisfied the customer. And that's why there is a far bigger challenge on the CEOs, and I would really say the shareholder, the owners. They are the ones who really need to have the big visions to make this real. And so that would be a big challenge, because the execs, the managers can only play in a certain time frame, whereas the owners can probably straddle that time frame better.
Yeah. Good.
Absolutely
Thanks,
right.
and thank you. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
Sir, this is Vibhanu.
Vibhanu, can you switch on your camera?
Yes, sir. Hello, sir. So my question is that how should this concept be seen for a conglomerate? Let's say that it has so many strategic business unit which focuses on so many different areas. So I'm in a demo where I work mainly for energy sector. Now, when we see energy, then there's a whole lot of areas to be focused at. So if we expand that focus, should it be done at the SBU level, or should it be done at the core company level?
Would like to tackle that question? Your question is highly diversified group where to focus on. Is that the question?
Yeah, correct. So now if a company is already diversified, it may already be focusing on almost all the industries or most of the industries. So if it widens its focus, like I'm not in railroad business, I'm in transport business. Likewise, if it widens the focus, then the company should be focusing on all the existing business avenues. Whether companies should drive in that way, or whether it's the job of the strategic business unit to not be myopic and maybe widen the scope and focus on each and every opportunity that is there.
Okay, all right. I'll just butt in first, and then of course two of our experts also can say something. Now, take Maliban is primarily our DNA is biscuits, but now if you take, we are in agri, we are in sort of Little Iron is the bakery side we are having. Then we are in the beverages, we have tea and coffee. Then we do have milk, dairy. So you see a very multiple category scenario. So our consumer applying the theories that definitely we have different marketing set of people. There's always, there can be overlap, but sort of definitely the people, the marketing people, the customers are different. Take Porsche, for example, against the tea, you see a complete different scenario, right? And so when you are diversifying, but still every customer segment, you have specific needs. So you have to understand and fulfill it. But from a company strategic point of view, our DNA, you have to stick to your DNA. So that's our DNA is biscuits. I'll give you a simple example. When we are going overseas, we will be manufacturing in 2 outside countries in the next 6 months. And we are only going with biscuits. Though we are having 5 different categories, big categories, we will not go. So we will only stick to our core business. So that's very important, because when you go on diversification, you may lose sometimes your expertise. Your expertise, Maliban, I'm taking my own example, is 70 years. Take global companies like Coca-Cola. They're in the beverage. They are earlier in the cola. They were testing, okay, what is our cola market share? Now they say share of throat. When you get up in the morning at 6 till you hit the bed at 10 o'clock, the amount of liquids you drink and what is the share. But still, the share of throat is there now in water. They're number 2 to Nestle. They are number 1 Minute Maid fruit juice is number 1, cola they're number 1. So still they are sticking to the beverage thing. They are not making t-shirts, for example. So diversification is very important for you to manage it, and otherwise you may lose the core competency advantage of your core sort of business. That's very important. Take all top companies. It can be Nike. Nike is not making soft drinks, for example, because they stick to so the diversification has to happen very carefully. Yeah. Anything you want to add, Sriyan or Dr. Niroshan? Yes.
I think what you said was absolutely correct, Ravi. But also just one thing to add is, on a very highly diversified conglomerate. If you take, for an example, LAUGFS, various types of industries. So if I picked it right, what Vibanu was asking was whether every organization look at this marketing myopia, and the answer is absolutely yes. I think we have to. It's mandatory, because if one organization within the umbrella of the group pulls at one direction and the other doesn't, it will always trickle down, and we all know negatives pass faster than the positives. So if one organization is not using it and is not customer centric, and the other is heavily doing that, then it will always have a gap. So I feel that it's absolutely important that across the board, and then we come into this other point of deliberate strategy being forced, and where the culture by itself will take. So it is a top-down push as well as bottom-up as well within an organization. So just to add to what you said, Ravi.
Thanks, Doctor. Thank you. Asanga, so
Ravi,
yeah.
Ravi, if I may chip in just to say that.
Sorry. Yes, sure.
No.
Yes,
No
sure.
What seems to be playing out is that the companies who have diversified seem to be progressing further. That's what we are seeing in the world, because the tech companies, the companies who have grown, have not grown to that size from the core that they began with. But it is only the companies who are diversifying into positions of strength, or where they can actually gain consumer insight and add value with what they have, who are winning the game. But clearly versus sticking to knitting of what you did for a century versus spreading, it looks like the companies who are diversifying, and you're seeing people like LAUGFS and all in Sri Lanka and globally many examples. It seems that the
spreading your wings seems to be winning the day.
Okay.
Cautiously
Thank
spreading
you.
your wings.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, Sriyan, your point of view. Yes, Asanga, we will continue. How is the time goes?
We are actually almost 5 minutes past 7 now. So
Yeah,
one round of closing remarks, then we can wind up.
So, okay, shall I start?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Now, when you really see the last 1 hour, the two experts, Sriyan and Dr. Niroshan, and of course, Asanga, to start with, what we discuss is that definitely, though it's a 60-year-old concept, very much applicable, whatever industry you are in. It can be in consumer products, sort of technological driven or service, whatever. So it's very, very important. Now, I think from a student's point of view, especially, I think the audience is only about 10% is the hardcore marketing people. The balance 90% is non-marketing. So then, especially how you apply this rather than a sort of the marketing exam per se, is a different thing from your organization point of view. Is that actually to support when you understand is okay, my salary is not paid by the company, my salary is paid by my consumer. So it's protecting my consumer, protecting my customer is absolutely crucial, though I'm in finance or in supply chain, understand that, because if you win with the consumer, technically you win the organization. If the organization wins, you all. So that's my sincere advice to you. Yeah.
Great, Ravi. Thank you. Lovely. Sriyan, you want to add closing remarks?
Sure. Yeah,
I think. Is it?
Yeah, power went off and my laptop died. So, but Asanga, you're a much better guru on this than I am. But just as a closing remark, what I would leave for the students and people on the call is that from all you heard, it is very unlikely that you're going to be able to predict all of this. But what you can do is respond very, very fast in this current context. So if you haven't got it right, or you're seeing early signs of someone who's come out with something which looks like they're on the right track, you should not forgive yourself if you didn't read and react fast. And I think that cardinal sin today still many people are committing.
Thanks, Sriyan.
Thank you. Great.
Yeah.
Niroshan.
Yeah, so quick one. We've gone through the document. There is nothing to argue about it. It's absolutely proven. I think to the students, one fundamental mistake that I was also doing when I was seated at your seats was we listen to things, we take everything, we grasp everything, but unfortunately we don't activate them when we go into the forefront. We say it's a good discussion, good article. Asanga's article is honestly good. It's very practical. But end of the day, when we go into the market out there, we go back to our old place and we say, it's all right. So it's important that we activate it. Once we listen, once we take these things in, we need to activate it. Then only we will start seeing those results. So that's my closing remark.
Ravi, I think the thing I want to share with everybody is that, I mean, you remember the time we spent inside the office arguing among ourselves and fighting internal battles, knowing that the battle to bring revenue to the company is out there in the market. Yeah. And we spend probably the least amount of time in the market and spend more time in office. In my 25, 30 years, if I had spent that time in the market, I think I would have been much wiser, and my companies where I worked would have created more value to the consumers. But thank you very much, gentlemen. It's an absolute honor to have all of you. Ravi, of course, part of PIM, and Sriyan, and it's fantastic to get your thoughts in this. And Niroshan, as always, brings a completely different dimension. I think we're running out of time because we know lots of people are struggling with power cuts and so on. PIM is also generator power now. So thank you very much, gentlemen, and hope this was very beneficial for all of you. And so all the best. And as Niroshan said, put into use. Otherwise, it's just a waste of time. Thank you and good night.
Thanks, thanks, Asanga. Good night. Good
Thank
night.
you, everyone. Good night.
Sriyan.
Good luck.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.